Hello one and all, Jasper here, and I debated on making this video because let's face it, we all know this is true. It doesn't matter if you're a book reader or a show watcher, Team Black or Team Green, Alicent has done something that few are capable of and made people of all backgrounds come together to hate on this bitch. But why is that? Well, I'm going to lay out all of the issues with this broad for you on why she is such a despised character depending on who you are, starting with the side that I happen to be a part of. We book readers are a very prickly kind of people. We believe that the only time one should make changes from the original source material when adapting it to a movie or show is for practical reasons. And one of the reasons we hold tightly to this belief is because more often than not, when a change happens, it's garbage. And there's no better proof of this than with Alicent herself, as she is so different from her book counterpart. You wonder why they didn't change her name along with everything else. Give her the old Talisa treatment, because if you're not going to do anything better with the character, at least don't drag their name through the mud. Sadly, she kept the name, and the incompetent writers insist that this is Alicent, when she bears only a small physical resemblance to her character of the books. For those of you who don't know, the literary version of Alicent is a far more cold and competent character. I would personally describe her as similar to Cersei, but intelligent. While starting off on somewhat friendly terms with Rhaenyra after she gave birth to her son Aegon, the relationship between the two began to sour, as would be expected given the political ramifications of having a son. She never doubted herself in her support of her son, and did so until the end. Compared that to her show counterpart, who flips-flops from supporting Rhaenyra to working against her every day, and it can drive a fan of the books to madness. It also does not help that Alicent is a side character in the books. Now, who the main character is can be hard to nail down depending on who you ask, just like in Game of Thrones. There are so many characters that vary widely in importance that you could give the title of protagonist to a lot of different people. And I can even somewhat understand why the show went with the angle of it being Rhaenyra versus Alicent. If only they actually stuck with it. Now, obviously, with the show, Rhaenyra and Alicent have by far the most screen time. I think only Daemon comes in between them. However, in the books, it's much messier. Most people would say that the protagonist of the two sides in the dance is between Rhaenyra and Aegon, because after his coronation, Alicent's importance to the story and events drastically decreases as Aegon becomes more prominent. I always found myself picturing Daemon and Aemond as being the main faces of the faction and the real driving force of the war. But regardless of that, the fact of the matter is, because Alicent was chosen to be the green representative in the show, they are forced to give her more scenes that go beyond the book, that pull her even further away from her original take. The quality in this case is meaningless to an extent because at the end of the day, the writers are taking a character that is not of their own creation and molding it to what they want rather than taking advantage of who they are. Disney has been doing a lot of this in the past decade or so. They did it with Cruella de Vil, Maleficent, Captain Hook, Luke Skywalker, and many others. You might as well have changed their name and put out a new IP. Oh, but that doesn't make as much money as shitting on established stuff, now does it? At the end of the day, she isn't Alicent, but just a good cosplay attempting to be Alicent, though that's being generous. A character can be hard to balance when it comes to competency. Make them too competent, and they are a Mary Sue. Too worthless, and they become an annoying hindrance. Surprise, surprise, Alicent in the show is nothing but a hindrance. The first season is where she is probably at her most accomplished, but even then takes actions that do more harm than good. Siding with Rhaenyra over her father is probably the biggest example, changing her mind several times on if she should support Rhaenyra or not, all the way to the final episode she appears in. The only good, and since you can't see my script, I want to be clear that there are some really big asterisks on the good part, is how she recruits Criston Cole to her side. Though of course, that is done off screen, so we don't even get to see how she accomplishes this. When the second season rolls around, it gets even worse. questioning everyone's decisions without having any good ideas of her own, not having Rhaenyra arrested the moment she reveals herself in the Great Sept, failing to console her son after he lost a child. I mean, Jesus Christ. If Otto is able to show more compassion than you are a fucked up human being. She also belittles her son, insulting him, which leads to him trying to prove himself and almost getting killed. And to end it all, she offers Rhaenyra that she will surrender the city to her, even though Rhaenyra makes it clear that she must execute Aegon. So we can add incredibly disloyal to many of her moral fallacies, though there were signs of that since the first season. Quick to change sides at a moment's notice for little to no justification. In my eyes, her being conflicted was okay until the moment her son lost his eye. But after that, there should have been no more looking for middle ground. She should have been all in on Team Green. Yet, that isn't what happens. She has a little dinner party with Rhaenyra and decides suddenly she should be queen. Oh, but then she hears her husband's dying words, who, keep in mind, had lost most of their cognitive abilities and senses. So now she's backstabbing her friend? And on it goes, getting even worse in the second season. Who needs enemies when you have allies like this, right? Can we even call her a Green? Why was she chosen to be the face of the faction? To be on all the posters, on all the advertisement. There she is, staring at Rhaenyra in defiance. Yet, she embodies it in the worst way possible. And the writers knew. They knew she would be a traitor. I don't have the answers. And I don't think the writers do either, because there are too many contradictions that they wouldn't be able to come up with a satisfying answer. Enough about that, though. That's the Greens' take. Now let's move on to the longest chapter of this video. She's on Team Green. And finally, the show watchers, who I think have the most universal opinion on it that most people will agree with. Because they have no book knowledge, they are not comparing her to someone better, and since some show watchers don't feel the need to pick a side, they are less likely to have tribalism affect their judgment. And because of that, all the other groups will likely agree with these takes, and that is Alicent is a walking contradiction and has no true character. What is the point of being invested in a character whose motivations change from episode to episode? Why do we want to watch a character whose actions work against them despite said motivations and goals changing so often? There is nothing to latch onto, nothing to figure out, because at the end of the day, she is not a character but a tool the writers are completely incompetent of using. It also does not help that she has little if any redeeming qualities, but plenty of bad ones. She is indecisive, a hypocrite, bitter, envious, and unbelievably incompetent, as stated before. Yet I struggle to think of any positive traits we can apply to her, which is needed even with an antagonist. Look at Cersei. Guilty of many of these traits that I mentioned, but we all enjoy her because at the very least, her motivation stays consistent and her actions make sense in the context. Plus, unlike Alicent, she holds enough power and authority to be a player, to be important, to have a say in what's to come, and her most positive trait, as Tyrion said, she loves her children. Well, that and her cheekbones. Alicent is all alone. And for good reason, because there is no reason to help her. Anyway, that's all of my thoughts on the topic, but hey, I would love to hear all of your thoughts on the matter. Am I right and just missed other reasons on why she is a terrible character, or am I wrong and you have a good reason as to why? Make sure to put them down in the comments below. Until then, make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you don't want to miss any other videos. And I hope you all have a wonderful night.